So for the first part, it's basically the same thing that we were already doing. So this says sine of theta equals 1/2. So that's basically the same thing as saying inverse sine of 1/2 equals theta. So at what angle does sine equal 1/2? We just did that. That was literally number 1 on the bell ringer, right? So at what angle does sine equal 1/2? Pi over 6. It wants us to write it in degrees. So pi over 6 in degrees is what? 30 degrees. So for number 2, it says that secant of theta is 2. So that's like saying that inverse secant, or secant inverse of 2 equals theta. And we didn't talk about those yesterday, but we can figure that out, right? We just want to know at what angle would secant be 2. What does secant go with? What is it? You're too far ahead. I'm not there yet. So like secant, what is secant? Inverse of cosine. So you could look and see where cosine is 1/2. That's how I would do it. But if you're just like on it and you already know that it happens at whatever angle, then that's great too. But so if we're looking where cosine is 1/2, that's at 60 degrees or pi over 3. Is that okay? Yeah. We said 60 degrees. Questions on that? Are we good? Okay, cool. So we're going to start solving equations that have trig functions in them. So all our like normal rules for solving equations are still going to apply. And then we're just like, our last step is going to be something like these two where you've got to figure out what angle that happens at. It's going to be both in radians and degrees, so you just got to pay attention to what they're asking you for. And what else? A couple of them are going to use substitution, so this is not like absolutely necessary, but I think that it's helpful to go ahead and see it, just to simplify things a little bit. So to show you what I'm talking about, we're going to look at number 4. So I've already worked this one out all the way. So your function or your equation is 2 cosine plus 4 equals 5. And so we're just going to replace that whole cosine with a u instead. And so then it's just one variable, and you're just solving that equation. You get u by itself, then plug cosine back in. So then we want to know where cosine is going to equal 1/2. And so that's going to happen at pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. And the reason we have 2 answers there is because our interval is from 0 to 2 pi today, instead of stopping at pi. Is that okay? That was a lot of information. Are we all right? Okay. So we'll do one that's a little bit simpler. I mean, I guess you could use substitution, whatever. But we'll do number 3 first. So we're going to solve for x. We're in degrees because it says from 0 to 360. What do we need to do first to get x by itself here? Move the 3 over. So then we've got 2 sine of x equals negative root 3. Then what do we do? Divide by 2. So sine of x equals negative root 3 over 2. And at what angle does that happen? Bless you. 4 pi over 3, 5 pi over 3. Is that correct? Yeah. And that's in degrees, so we'll say 240 and 300. Is that okay? Have any questions so far? All right. So, let's do number 5. So on this one, it says to use that u substitution, and we're going to, and then this will probably be the last time we do that, and then if you like it, you can continue to do it, and if you don't, you don't have to. So we're just going to say let secant of x equal u. So that's going to be 3u squared minus 4 equals 0, which I think that's a little bit easier to look at. But again, if you don't need that, then you don't have to use it all the time. You will use u substitution more in calculus, which is why we go ahead and start introducing you to it now, just so you're a little bit familiar with it. So what would we do from there? 4 over. So we've got 3u squared equals 4. And then what do we do? That's 3. and we'll square root both sides. So u equals plus or minus 2 over root 3. And we could rationalize that because that's how it's going to look. Or should we rationalize that? Actually, since we're talking about secant, it might be easier if we don't rationalize that. Because what is secant? Inverse of cosine, right? So if we like flip that, if we rationalize it and then flip it, we're going to have to like rationalize again. So if we just leave it and then look for where it's flipped, it's going to be easier to find. Does that make sense? Do y'all get what I'm saying? So we need to know where secant is positive or negative 2 over square root 3, or where cosine is square root 3 over 2. Does that make sense? So where is cosine square root 3 over 2? I'm going to write that cosine over 2. So that happens at 30. Where else? Oh, yes, this was in radians. So pi over 6. So we got pi over 6. And then also 5 pi over 6. And where else? Seven pi over 6. And what's the last one? 11 pi over 6. Questions on that? Alright, so we'll try the next one. So it wants you to use substitution here. Do we want to do that or not? No? Okay. So we've got the absolute value of sine equals 1. How do you handle absolute value functions? Like, how do you solve those? Do you remember? Absolute value for both sides, right? So you can basically just say like sine of x equals 1, and then sine of x is going to equal negative 1. Because either one of those things could have happened, and we could have ended up with the same answer, so you've got to set it up for both cases. So we just need to know where sine is 1, where sine is negative 1. So where is sine 1? Pi over 2. And where is sine negative 1? Three pi over 2. Any questions so far? So, I don't want to do all of these with you because I don't think y'all need that. Do you need that? Okay, so let's do a couple ones that are a little bit harder. 11. Okay. Yeah, we'll do 11. So, what are y'all thinking with that? If this was like a regular equation, what would you try to do first? Put your variables on the same side. So, like, this is where I think it's a little bit helpful to use U substitution just so it's a little less messy. Do y'all want to do that, or are you good? Do that? Okay. So, we're just going to say let U equal tangent. So we're going to have 8u squared minus 2 equals 1 minus, no, don't do that, because we're going to factor.
Or what?
We're going to factor, so don't do that. Don't write it as tangent squared. Did y'all hear what If said? Probably not. He said, why can't we just write it as u being tangent squared, because we have that going on for both of them. We're going to have to end up factoring to solve this, so we don't want to do that. Is that okay?
Wait, what did I say?
Didn't you say that? Can't it just be tangent? Okay, I made that up. That happened in my head. You don't want to make it tangent squared because we're going to have to factor later. So yeah, it's just u is tangent minus, what did we say, u squared. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth there. Okay, so to solve that, what do we need to do? We said we want to get our variables on the same side. So you could add u squared or subtract 8u squared. What do y'all want to do? I would add u squared. So we've got 9u squared minus 2 equals 1. Then what do we do?
divide by, with 2 over the number.
Move the 2, then divide by 9, so 9u squared equals 3, so u squared equals 1/3. Is that okay? Then we'll square root both sides. So u equals 1 over root 3, plus or minus. So we need to know where tangent is going to be 1 over root 3. We could rationalize that if we wanted to. Either way, it's going to basically be the same thing. So where does tangent equal 1 over root 3? We want it in degrees this time. So 30. Where else? 150. Where else? Once again at 7 pi over 6, so 210. Yeah? Are y'all like seeing this on your unit circle as we go through? And then where's the last one? 330. Questions on that? Alright, so number 12 is already worked out for you. That's one where you do have to factor. So they did use substitution again, and then they pulled out a GCF, and they did difference of squares. And then just like we factor like normal, they set each of those, or like when you're solving from your factors like normal, you set each factor equal to 0 and then solve from there. And that's how they got all of this. Does that make sense? So there's an example worked out like that. Let's do number 13 because it's very similar. Is that okay? All right. So do y'all want to do use substitution or not? I'm going to just because I like it and you have to write less. So I'm going to do that, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So I'm going to say u equals sine of x. So this is just 2u squared plus u minus 1 equals 0. And how are we going to go about solving that? Factor?
X factor.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you got to multiply that 2 back, so we need factors of -2 that subtract to be 1. What are they? Are we okay with that? The factoring is all right? Okay. So then from there, we're going to set each factor to 0 and solve. So with the u plus 1, we're going to have u equals -1. Then we'll have u equals 1/2. So we basically just want to know where does sine equal -1. At 3 pi over 2. And then where does sine equal 1/2? Pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. Questions on that? Alright. Do we want to do 14 together? Yeah? Okay. So, we need to solve this equation. What are our thoughts on how we could do that? We're going to use the calculator in the last step. So you could like cross multiply? Is that what that's what I would do, just because it's like a fraction equals a fraction. So multiply this side by 3, multiply that side by 6. Okay, Cal? Alright, so we'll have 12 tangent of x minus 3 equals 6 minus 6 tangent. Is that okay? So again, if you want to do u substitution here, you can. And we'll just let your u be tangent. That was awful sounding. But if you don't, that's okay too. Use, no use. What do y'all want? Yes? So what are we going to do from there? Get all your variables on the same side. So I would add 6u over, and then add the 3 over. So we've got u equals 1/2. So basically we just want to know where does tangent equal 1/2. And that doesn't happen nicely on our unit circle, right? So we talked about how to do that yesterday with like building your triangle and whatnot. We're just not gonna, and do it in the calculator instead. Is that okay for today? All right. What mode do you need to be in? Degree, because they're asking you for your angle in degree. So just make sure that you're in degree mode. And we know how to type this in the calculator. Yeah, we went over that yesterday, right? I thought we did. So when you type it in the calculator, what do you get? Can we go like 2 decimal places? What? Inverse tangent of 1/2. Oh, okay, I guess we didn't talk about that yesterday. My bad, guys. So inverse tangent, it's still in the trig menu. So you'll just go tangent and do inverse tangent of 1/2. And then you get like 26.57 for going 2 places. Yeah? So we'll say 26.57 degrees. Okay, but we're solving from 0 to 360. And we know that tangent is restricted to just negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, right? So we have the whole other half of the unit circle that's not been considered by your calculator. So we have to find that other angle as well. So we know, what are we talking about? Where tangent is 1/2. So where else is tangent going to be positive? We know that it happens somewhere in quadrant 1, and then where would the other one be? In quadrant 3. So we would have to take our angle that we already have, add 360 to that, and that would give you the angle in the third quadrant. Or not 360, 180. Does that make sense? Because you know that like it's going to be the same thing, just in another quadrant, so we can just add 180 to that. So plus 180. So other angle's going to happen at 26.57. Questions on that? So we're all right? Okay. So looking at 15, y'all want to do that one together? We got to do the quadratic formula, so I figured y'all probably not want to do that by yourself. So it says solve for x between 0 and 2 pi. So we've got cosine squared minus 4, cosine minus or equals negative 2. Do y'all want to do use or no use? Use, I like to use. So we'll have u squared minus 4u. Then I'm going to go ahead and add that 2 over, so plus 2. And how would we go about solving that? Quadratic formula, shocker, right? So what is the quadratic formula again? Just like that song. Didn't anybody ever teach y'all that? I'm not about to sing it. I was about to say, I think that's a Mr. Hall thing. So we need to like set this up. We wrote it down. That's great. So negative b is going to be like 4, positive 4, since our b is already negative, plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times 1 times 2 all over 2 times a, so just 2. So we're going to have 4 plus or minus 16 minus 8, so square root of 8. Two. I was like, where am I at? I forgot. Is that okay? Sorry, I said it. So I'm feeling a little better. So we should have ended up with 2 plus or minus root 2. Yeah? Is that our final answer?
No.
No, that's just like what x equals. So we've got to figure out what cosine of those values would be. So we're going to do cosine of 2 plus square root 2 and then cosine of 2 minus square root 2. We'll do the calculator again for these. Is that okay? So we'll just type those in, see what we get. Yes, we want to be in radians for this one because it's asking between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, so did we get answers yet? Are we still working on it? So when y'all did 2 plus root 2, did you get number of calculation? Yeah, and why does that happen? Do it. I just can't hear you, I'm sorry. Right, it's not between like 0 and 2 pi, so it's out of our boundaries, that's why it's not going to work there. So it only works if you're 2 minus square root 2. So we got 0.94 or 0.95, no, 94, because we're going 2 places. So we'll say 0.94. But also, since we're going between 0 and 2 pi, we know that our calculator is only going to look between 0 and pi. So we've got to figure the other angle that this happens at. So it's really easy when you're talking about degrees because you can just add like 180. But that's not the case for radians just because like we don't have those memorized, at least like I don't have those memorized as easily. So if we're talking about cosine, and it was positive or negative? Positive? Yeah. So cosine is positive in quadrant 1 and where else?
4.
And 4. So how are we going to find where that other angle happens? We could do, so this angle is like that 0.94. So if we wanted this angle, you could do 2 pi minus 0.94, and that would get you your second one. Is that okay? So we'll do 2 pi, so 2 pi minus that one. And we get 5.34. So those would be our answers there. Questions on that? All right, cool. So I want you to try 7 through 10 because we skipped those. They should be easier, I feel. So I'll give you a few minutes to work through those and then we'll go over them. Is that all right? Yeah, what's up?
Are we ever going to have to solve that without calculating?
If you did, it would probably be like on the unit circle. That makes sense. Those would be much better points. So, anything else?